Therefore, that is a very reasonable to the CEO to avoid the tax.
If it's not illegal, you can do it, right? That's the thinking. However, nobody advertises that they do it because everybody realizes this is very bad PR.
Yes.
If you, as a company, as Apple, pay 1.6% in taxes, while the average consumer, your consumer, is paying 35% in taxes, that's something to explain.
Okay, let's begin.
So I would like to start actually. So an interesting thing happened in France this week with taxation, but maybe I would show that after the video of the VPRO. VPRO is a Dutch channel. They make very high quality documentaries, and this one is about taxation, global taxation. It is in English, by the way. It used to be only in Dutch, but now they make they produce programs for a global audience.
Is this one?
This one. I wonder why this is under my account. Tax week.
Of course, you always pay your taxes when they're due. But imagine a world in which there are no taxes,
This video
where
is
laws
about
and regulations can be
Argentina?
adjusted according to your own wishes.
What's this?
Wouldn't we all love to live in such a world?
Wait.
To make this tax-free universe as visible for
Who's
you as
another?
possible, we'll take
But
you
I
on
saw
a
it
world
with English
tour.
subtitles.
From Norfolk to Nairobi, from Long Island to London, and from Amsterdam to Dubai.
Wait.
Here's what you can expect.
I love the phrase that we're looking for neutral taxation. It actually means no tax, by the way.
And actually, we now know where the money is. It's parked in these offshore havens.
You know, we're greedy. We're greedy people. We are in a battle with each other and our governments to survive.
This is Backlight. Welcome on board the tax-free tour.
This is so strange. Why? Maybe
the tax-free tour.
there is a different version of this.
This is not one you wanted to show?
Yeah, well, I wanted to show this one, but without the French. French-Arabic subtitles.
They sell 20 million iPads a year for about $500 retail. That's $10 billion. In China, they've been employing about 1.2 million Chinese workers, and they pay them about $40 to $50 a piece for those iPads. So the iPads that they're selling for about 10 times what they're buying from China. So China realizes about $800 million out of the 10 billion. Where does the rest of the $10 billion go? Well, they park about $2.2 billion of royalties offshore on low tax havens. So the total gross margin on all this is about $6 billion, and the total effective tax, we've looked at Apple in the last year, they've paid about 1.9% tax, corporate tax rate in the United States. Remember, the United States effective tax rate is 35%. Dennis Healey, the former UK Chancellor, said the difference between evasion and avoidance is the width of a prison wall. So when you're into this kind of higher echelon tax gaming, the rules are very flexible.
How is it that Apple pays only 1.9% tax on its profits generated outside the US? To understand this, allow me to take you on a tour through a world that, for most of us, is hidden from view. A world in which the capital flows of multinationals are structured and sometimes make a quick stopover in the Cayman Islands, Cyprus, or Amsterdam. A so-called offshore world that exists behind physical and virtual walls, and where little or no taxes are paid.
My day job as a corporate investigator is looking at offshore structures, tax haven structures of companies that our clients are going to invest in. So it's looking at their relationships, it's looking how they acquired their wealth to begin with, and it's looking at the corporate structures that they employ. And often these will be long, complicated, completely mysterious chains involving different tax havens. Something called, say for example, the Cyprus sandwich, where you might have a Ukrainian company, so Ukrainian assets which are then owned by a Cyprus company, that's then owned by a Luxembourg company, that's then owned by a Cyprus company, that then goes off in 5 different ways to Belize, British Virgin Islands and the Cayman Islands and Panama. And this is the stuff we're looking at. And we have to, well, I think in that case it's pretty clear that things aren't very clear and aren't transparent.
Allow us to introduce business intelligence investigator William Britton Catlin. On behalf of major financial institutions, he delves into the shadow side of global capital flows.
So this is this is what we're looking at. Here's our Cyprus sandwich. Goes up to Belize. It's very confusing to work out what's going on here. I mean, there's no rational explanation for what is happening, but you can see that all these individuals here at the top, Mr. A, Mr. B, C, D, E, and F, are all ultimately holding these assets through a series of chains, levels, cutouts. They're in Belize, and these probably we would think would go back to bank accounts in Switzerland. So this may not even be the end of it.
How does Apple succeed in only paying 1.9% tax on its profits generated outside the US? If foreign profits were to flow back to Apple's headquarters, the company would have to pay 35% corporate income tax. So Apple prefers to direct the foreign profits to a subsidiary in Ireland, where corporate income tax is much lower, 12.5%. But before that, profits are first looped through the Netherlands, where intellectual property is subject to little or no tax. The reduced profits then pass through another Irish subsidiary and on to the British Virgin Islands, where corporate income tax is nil. Apple is considered a pioneer on this tax route, which is commonly known as double Irish with a Dutch sandwich.
Let's see who uses this tax haven system. I mean, you've got to see the tax haven offshore financial system as being part and parcel of the mainstream economic system. I mean, there's a pretty much a complete integration between one and the other. So the money is flowing around. It's not complicated. I mean, there are these options out there, and you use them, you explore them, you see what you can do, and what you're looking at is a map which is, it's not a uniform financial economic world out there, especially when it comes to tax and where you can place your money and how it's taxed. There are different rates all over the world. So you take advantage of the different rates. I mean, it's kind of fairly obvious, really.
It became clear over time that this offshore industry was growing, but surprisingly enough, nobody had made any estimates of the size and growth of the industry. You'd expect the World Bank or the IMF to take an interest in this. They have all these economists. The OECD does a lot of work on tax havens, but nobody had ever quantified the size of the offshore industry. And so,
Why is that?
well, it's a very controversial subject. I mean, the World Bank spent a lot of time studying poverty and measuring it endlessly, but they don't study inequality.
Lawyer and investigative journalist James S. Henry used to work as chief economist for the McKinsey consultancy. In his spare time, he calculated the amount of capital that is parked in the global offshore industry, a calculation that neither the IMF nor the World Bank have ever ventured to undertake. That makes Henry's very conservative estimates the first of their kind and undisputed to date.
You know, it's kind of like estimating the size of a black hole. We came up with a headline number of $21 to $32 trillion as of the year end 2010, which is an astonishing figure. Nobody else had ever done that. The embarrassing fact is that the rich countries in the world are supposed to be
finished. Okay, no problem.
responsible and the so-called developed countries are running this kind of shell game for the world. We figure that of the 21 to 32 trillion dollars of offshore wealth from owned by private individuals, about a third of that is from the developing world.
I don't understand what she's explaining. This kind of sandwiches offshore.
Basically, what he's explaining is that in the world there are
They
different.
show the percentage of tax, right?
Right. So there is a tax duty in the United States, income tax, the corporate income tax
34%.
of your profit, 35%.
Mm.
However, Apple only pays 1.9% of all income, of all profit generated outside of the US. How do they do that? And then he explains that actually, those 35% is being that is composed of, for example, the tax for intellectual property rights, and there's an income tax component. There are different components. But instead of making all that money, that profit that is earned outside of the United States, instead of bringing that directly back to the United States, they bring it to other countries. So they bring it to other countries means that first, so they want to pay income tax in countries where there is zero income tax, like in the Cayman Islands. Cayman Islands doesn't have.
But Cayman Island, they are going to maybe headquarters?
So they have a mailbox company there.
No, they are the Apple company established headquarters there.
A mailbox company. Maybe there are not even people working there.
No, they're moving headquarters there.
No.
No. Actually, how they?
So they just move the ownership of the foreign operations away from the United States into the Cayman Islands. so they create an artificial company in the Cayman Islands, and basically that company, the profit of that is made overseas is going to the Cayman Islands, because in that case you pay tax in Cayman. And
why they can do that?
Why they can do that? Because it is possible. If your company is located in Cayman Islands, you don't have to pay income tax.
Yeah, but the American government, they allow them to do that?
Yes.
Why they allow them to do that?
Well, why would they not allow it? But how could they prevent them from doing that?
But they know that they just escape tax because of the actually sales amount.
Right. Yeah, well, basically, I mean, they
Whatever they try to do that, actually they are selling certain amount in the States.
well, of course, I mean, there is sales tax of every iPad that's being sold in United States because VAT.
No, I'm talking bottom line.
So, well, it doesn't. It cannot be applied to the money that's being made in the U.S., but only to the money that's being made outside of the U.S. So they can decide how to bring the money back to the U.S., right? But they actually bring that money to the Cayman Islands, and then it's been taxed.
Japanese government, I read some article, they try to charge if they're going to bring outside Japan, but they're going to charge at the bottom line for these companies.
Well, there are now governments who are trying to deal with this because it's not only like Apple. You think about Facebook, for example. Like all the Facebook advertisement that is being sold, it's $1 billion plus advertisement that's being sold, but there's no tax revenue. Like for example, if I don't know, a regular company like Toyota is buying advertisement from Facebook, basically that advertisement is being targeted to Japanese clients. However, no tax can be levied because Facebook doesn't reside in Japan.
This is strange, right?
Well, this is the reality, and it's not illegal. So what you
How
see?
that government don't change their tax law?
Well, one of the problems is that, and we will see that in this video, countries are competing with each other in order to create the most attractive conditions in order to attract these mailbox companies to their country. So in order to get just a marginal tax is better than nothing. So if, for example, now Cayman is not charging anything, and I don't know how they are going to, maybe they survive on the services that they provide to these mailbox companies, but what it does is that the countries that are actually hosting these kind of companies, like for example that who are exploiting the natural resources of let's say.
But Cayman 0%, how they're going to get benefit?
Well, their benefit is basically because there are a lot of like PwC, EY, what have you, who put like a gazillion consultants over there.
No.
They have people who fly in there regularly, so hotels and so professional services, hotel industry, tourism, everything else that will provide them with benefits.
Stuck with the PW plus water is very rich.
Yeah.
They could pay the many
They got
money to the hotel.
They got money for reviewing the document something.
Yeah. So they provide all these services to companies who want to establish a.
Still, I don't understand why American government, Japanese government allow them to do that.
Once they leave Japan, they're home free, no? I mean, why would they? How can they enforce them?
How they going to charge Amazon? Like they don't charge tax for Amazon, right? Why Japanese government try not to do that?
Okay, that's the next video.
Okay, I
That's
don't
the next
understand.
video.
I don't understand.
That's the next video. So that has never been challenged. But last week, France was the first one to actually step up and make a change. But we don't know whether it's going to work because it could very well be because the United States is very angry with France for
Why? I know that. Why American government angry?
because they say this is our company, this is unfair trade practices. Why are you doing that? This company is an American company, so you cannot leverage taxes on these revenues.